Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Masha Schwartz with Masha Schwartz Art, and today we're talking about how to create mats for your artwork. I learned how to create mats many years ago when I worked in the art store, and some of the professional framers that work there actually showed me a few tips and tricks on what to do when you create your mats so that they look professional and so that your art actually looks upscale. Today, at times I buy already pre-cut mats and sometimes I make my own, but if you're just starting out and you don't want to spend a lot of money on pre-cut mats, this may be a good way to go. So before we walk through the process of cutting mats, I want to mention one thing about your artwork. I didn't know this many years ago when I started painting, and I wish I did, because now it creates a little bit of challenges for me to frame or mat some of those pieces. When you mat artwork, 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch around the border of your art is going to be covered by the mat so that your artwork actually sits behind the mat and doesn't fall out of the frame. That said, when you sign your artwork, you have to make sure that your signature or anything important doesn't actually go into the border of your artwork, because it's going to be cut off. The second thing I want to recommend is regarding the actual mats. When you go to the art store, Michael's or another place, have them pre-cut your mats to the size of the frame that you're going to put these mats into. And what I typically suggest is that you select common size frames like 8 by 10, 9 by 12, 11 by 14, 16 by 20. These types of frames are easy for people to find. They are cost effective, and if somebody purchases just your artwork with a mat, they can go and find a frame without spending an arm and a leg on custom framing your piece. This is important to remember, because even if you sell one piece to a person, if a person goes through challenges framing their artwork once they purchased it from you, they're not gonna come back to you to purchase another piece. But if the process of purchase is easy and if the process of framing is easy, your customers are more likely to come back to you. Today we're gonna be framing this piece. The first thing you want to do is measure the size of your artwork. In our case, this piece is 7 3/4 in length by 5 inches wide. I always write all the numbers down so I don't get confused. So we have 5 inches wide by 7 3/4. We're going to subtract 1/4 of an inch from that number, because remember, we're gonna have to cover a little bit of the perimeter. So that gets us to 4 3/4 by 7 1/2. We also need to know the size of our actual mat. In this case, we're using an 8 by 10 mat. The next step is to figure out how wide of a border you're gonna have around. It may be identical, or it might be a little different on the sides and on top and bottom. You can also frame mats that aren't necessarily centered. Some people like to have a wider bottom part of the mat, so in that case you're going to account for that as you're measuring those dimensions. In this case, we're going to do the same kind of all around. So the next piece we're going to determine is how wide that's going to be on the sides and on top and bottom. We're going to take the width of the mat and subtract the opening size in the width. In this case, we're going to have 8. We have 8 here and 475 opening. So you're going to have 3 1/4 inches that you need to divide by 2 to get how wide each side is going to be. So our sides here are going to be 1 5/8. When you go through the same process for top and bottom, you're going to get 1 1/4 on top and 1 1/4 inch on the bottom. So we're going to measure out those dimensions from the border of the mat and mark them down. Once you created your opening here, you always want to do this on the back, by the way. You can start cutting your mat. I use a T-ruler and a Logan cutter. Logan cutter can also be bought with a metal strip that you adjust it to, so you just slide it along and not necessarily need a ruler, but I just use a ruler and a cutter. You're always gonna put your ruler on the line, and your mat cutter is gonna be facing out from the center, not in. This little piece here allows you to press on the blade and push it forward. Make sure you don't pull it back because you're gonna rip your mat. The second thing to note about the mat cutter is you always wanna make sure your blade is sharp. If your blade is not sharp, you're going to rip your mat and it's gonna be disastrous. Before you get ready to cut, you want to align this little line on the back of your cutter with the line of the border of the opening. I usually like to go a little bit out from that, so as my blade starts to cut in, it creates a smooth corner for me. Corners are always the trickiest part of the cut, and that's where your mat is gonna get snagged a little bit. You want to create one cut kind of deep in and go through it again just to make sure the mat has been cut all the way through. If you have a strong hand, you might be able to do one cut. I like to do 1 or 2, and you want to hold your ruler tightly down to make sure it doesn't slide or move when you do this. Here's our mat, and should fit our artwork well. As you can see here, my signature is a little cut off because it was really close, but I'm going to tape it from the back and it's ready to be framed. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to subscribe below, and I look forward to seeing you next time.